Thank you. Good morning. We'd like to call to order the Ways and Means Committee meeting for May 18th. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Alderwoman Evans. Chairwoman Davis.
Present.
7 present, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. Our next order of business is to approve our minutes from our previous meeting, which was May 11th.
I'll make a motion. We approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve our minutes from May 11th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans. Chairwoman Davis.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Thank you very much. So first of all, good morning to the committee and also to the public. So we're about to start this journey. We're going to be very busy for the next few weeks, but we're going to do all that we can to be attentive, listen to our department heads, understand the budget that they've sent to us, and discern at the end if it's adequate or not, and give suggestions and concerns. So what I'd like to do first is to allow our budget director, Payne, to give us an overall view of how the budget looks and how he arrived at those numbers after receiving information from the various departments. So Paul, if you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and good morning to members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am going to present, so let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can see everyone. Does that come up on everyone's screen now?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. All right. The proposed annual operating plan for FY23 is $1.23 billion. And you can see in that illustration that it's comprised of a number of funds, the largest of which is the general fund at $539.9 million. That's a 5.6% increase over the current fiscal year. In the special revenue categories, it totals $219.8 million. That's a 14.9% increase. And I should say most of the special revenues, the reason why that's up as much is because a lot of those are sales taxes and all, which took a big hit. And I'll be talking about that a little later during the pandemic. So we were expecting to see some recovery there. Grant fund categories, $87.5 million. That's a 30% increase. And most of that increase has to do with, there is a portion of ARPA funds in the proposed budget. And so, and I'll detail that in a moment. Debt service fund at $7.1 million. That's the decline of 13.4% in the current fiscal year, where there was a defeasance of existing GO debt. So that is not recurring. So that's why that is down. The capital improvement funds, $37.4 million. That's a 24.3% increase. Again, similar to the special revenue funds, the capital improvement funds have a lot of sales taxes as their sources of revenue. And so there are additional funds there. Enterprise funds are slightly low flat at $240.1 million. That's a decline of 3.3%. However, the airport's up 3.8 million or 2.3%. You'll see in the water division budget, they had included in this year's budget a lot of capital improvements drawing from their special funds set aside for capital, which is not recurring in their operating budget. So that's why you see the bigger decline in the water division, which is about a $12.1 million drop. The internal service funds category of those funds charging among departments, the biggest of which is the health insurance charges that for each department that gets paid out of there. There's also a fuel account, which is an internal service fund. That's up 4.3% overall. And you can see in the pie chart below, general fund's about 44% of that total. These next few slides, I know they're a lot busy, but I did want to show you some of our key revenues and how they've been impacted through the pandemic and how they've begun to recover through the third quarter of the current fiscal year. If you look at the first chart of the earnings tax, going back to the fourth quarter FY20 when the pandemic began, most of that decline had to do with the IRS deferral date, which was then deferring the tax due date, which we picked up in the first quarter of FY21. If you go down to the end of FY21, if you remember, we did outperform on the earnings tax, 35.7% increase in the fourth quarter of last year. A lot of that had to do with corporate returns as opposed to withholding. And you can see through the fiscal year, year to date, we did get a decline in the first quarter, which we anticipated because that was the IRS deferral date that was not going to be repeated. But it has been up higher than anticipated. We were expecting a decline this year, and because of that additional money, but we're actually seeing an increase. So we're up about 1.3% fiscal year to date. However, I did want to compare this to what the pre-pandemic first three quarters of FY20, just to give an idea about where we stood. And we're up about 6.4%. But again, most of that is in the corporate side. If you look at the withholding piece, the pieces that's the 1% of your individual withholdings, it is up just under 2%, and that's over a 2-year period. So that it tells you that while corporate receipts have been strong, withholding is still yet to recover completely. And that's borne out by the payroll tax you can see below, and I won't go through all those numbers, but if you look at the comparison, it's up 11%, which is exceeding budget estimates. But it's still 2.3% over the FY20 pre-pandemic period. So, and then again, that's over a 2-year period. So again, from a revenue standpoint, we're getting back to where we were pre-pandemic on a nominal term, but it's not given that with inflation, you're still behind. And sales tax, again, sales tax, second to earnings tax, sales tax, both general fund and all those special fund, it's one of the second largest contributors to revenue for the city. And you can see similar patterns here. Last year, it was down over 21%, which is pretty close to estimate. And we'd never seen that kind of reduction before. And then this year, we were expecting to see an increase, and it has. Through the first 3 quarters, it's up 35%, which is over estimate. The third quarter itself was actually very close to estimate. But again, if you look at comparing that FY20 period, it's still not quite up to where it was on a nominal terms, the FY20. In the local use tax receipts, that's the one tax where we've seen actually an increase in post-pandemic, where it was up 6.5% last year, and it's up 5.6% this year, whereas anticipating some pullback as sales taxes recover. I would expect see some pullback in the use tax. Haven't seen that yet, although you hear anecdotal reports on that in terms of the behavior of consumers post-pandemic. And so, but over FY20, it's up year 30%. So that is an increase over the pre-pandemic period. I would say, looking at the hotel and gross receipts tax collections, this chart here is probably the best snapshot you have of the pandemic itself. You can see where we were pre-pandemic in that period, and then that just nadir, that drop during the pandemic. And then it's got recovery, but it's not back to where it was, clearly. Both hotel and restaurants are still trailing. So you can see year to date, it's up over 100%, which is great, and it's in excess of budget. But compared to the pre-pandemic period, it's still down by 24%. And the similar story with the restaurants, although not as dramatic. It was down 36%, 37% last year. It's back up 34%, which is slightly better than budget through the third quarter, and then 50% overall this fiscal year. But that's still down 13% on the pre-pandemic period. And this illustration, basically, it takes the general fund and most of our major revenue sources just to compare where we are, where we've been, and what the outlook for FY23 is. Currently, we're exceeding estimates in the current fiscal year of 531.9 or almost $532 million in the general fund. Compared to FY19, that's a 530. So you're getting close to where you were pre-pandemic. Again, on a nominal term, it's not that's 3 years ago. So you're not seeing the growth you would expect, but you are getting back to where you were in some regards. For the estimates for FY23, if you look at the total bottom line, general fund and all the special funds, you're at 689 million. That's just about 3% over the 668.9 million going back 4 years to FY19. So it is recovering, although it's still trailing in real terms. Specifically to the general fund budget, we had beginning revenue estimates of 511.5 million. We did, again, we're excluding, we are including tracking through the third quarter. We were exceeding that by over $20 million, though some of that was one time. So we can't repeat that in FY23. And then we've got some underlying growth, got a net increase of 1.5%, or a net increase of 2.6% after the 1.5% adjustments for refuse and juvenile one-time revenues. So that gives you about $539.9 million. And in the FY22 budget was 511.5. And so what this next couple of pages do is summarize some of the major changes in the various departments. In general government and finance, of course, that you have the Board of Aldermen itself, which is up about $1 million. And that includes some of the, obviously the latter part of this coming fiscal year will be the reduction in the number of aldermen, and as well as the addition of 19 positions in supporting roles. Department of Personnel, we've got a $400,000 increase for promotional testing, mostly in police and fire departments. The Comptroller's office, well, let me jump back up to ITSA. We have a new accounting and payroll system, and there is over $2 million worth of support, continued support for implementation of that, as well as some additional positions for a $2.8 million increase. In the Comptroller's office, we had some contractual increases for both telecom and a big item being insurance on some of the buildings that we have insured. So that total increase in general government finance, 6.1 million. In the citywide accounts, in terms of debt service costs, there's not much change there. I won't go through all those details. It's about $400,000 net. But the bigger items, and this is Department 190, you will find in your budget. It's called citywide accounts. There is a line for $5 million for a pay and employee compensation and pay adjustments pending the approval of a pay plan to address some of the pay challenges we have this year. And you'll see across the board throughout all the departments' budgets sort of a salary adjustment equal to about 3% or so for a placeholder. Again, pending the pay plan. That's $4.1 million, 8.7 million, including police and fire. So that's anticipating that we do have some sort of a pay plan going into FY23. And in terms of employee retirement system, that's pretty much flat here. You'll see that's an increase on the later chart, but that's mostly related to the new positions that we've incorporated into the budget. And then health insurance premium was up 4.2%. Going to the Parks Department, notable items here. The biggest item here is in forestry. Well, first of all, recreation. We do have an increase related to some converting lifeguards from per performance to full-time, and then added a couple of positions. And then you'll see in the Prop P funds, they also added some recreational program positions as well. In forestry, the big item is a $950,000 increase for per performance employees for weed and debris control over LRA property maintenance buildings, property maintenance. LRA will be paying for that, and so hopefully that'll reduce some of the issues related to that problem. Let me see. And going down to judicial offices, the circuit court, we've got a $1.2 million increase. Most of those, a big chunk of that is for jury costs, and then the electronic monitoring of detainees of 1.2 million total. In the juvenile detention department, we're down 3 positions, but we've got an increase in contractual costs, and they're also doing some repairs at their facility. In the county offices, the most notable item would be on the election board, which, as you know, fluctuates between election year and non-election year, and next year's an election year, so we have election costs next year. In the street department, a couple items here. In the traffic division, we've got about an $800,000 increase, which includes some of the costs of supplies, which are up about $245,000, wiring and all that for lights and such, as well as a $250,000 for a traffic study. And then the bigger item on refuse, we've got a $1.9 million increase in disposal contract. That's the cost of disposing the waste, solid waste that's collected by the department. Overall, the refuse is up about $2.3 million, again, separate from the pay increase that I talked about earlier. In the Department of Public Safety, police pension, that's a bigger item. That's the biggest chunk of public safety. You've got $1.4 million for salary adjustments, matrix steps, attrition, and health insurance. That's about $1.4 million net. And then other increases in supplies, equipment, and contractual. However, the biggest increase you're going to see in police is on the pension side. Police pension increase went up $4.5 million. That's an impact from their experience study and their revised assumption on the returns. And one of the things, as I mentioned, when you have special funds during the pandemic, when the sales tax funds went down because of no one was out buying and our revenues fell, that reduced the amount that was in the budget for these special tax funds. So when they recover, that allowed for moving back from the general fund those items that were moved to begin with during the pandemic. So this offsets some of the increases in the general fund itself. And the same is similar for fire department, salary adjustments, matrix steps, $3.2 million increases, supplies and contractuals, a small amount. Now on fire pension, that went down by $1.6 million, that's mostly due to market returns. And they also have some special funds which offset some of the general fund costs. In other public safety, you'll see in the Director of Public Safety, 7 new positions, including 3 client service coordinators. That was a victim services unit, and then some safety officer. Let's see, I'll jump here down to corrections. That $5.9 million is the biggest increase there. That is, if you recall, this year we did still have monies in that federal housing fund, the inmate housing fund paid for by federal inmate housing. That was monies that we had still in that fund. That was a special fund 1116. But since that is no longer occurring, all those costs that were in that special fund get moved over to the general fund for corrections. So that's not an overall increase in corrections, but it does reflect the move from that special fund back to general revenue. And separate from that, there were a couple of positions there, including a safety officer that were added. And then we have an increase in the Civilian Oversight Board of about 9 positions. Let's see, Health Director, we'll get to them in the use tax discussion. And then the bigger increase here on facilities management, we've got a position, but a lot of contractual repairs and the cost of utilities up about $9 million. So that's about $28.4 million in increases, giving you your $539.9 million budget in the general fund. Looking at general fund revenues, again, that's just about $540 million, starting with the earnings tax, $200 million, it's 2.3% increase. What this is assuming is basically a resumption of normal growth. Going through the pandemic, you had the significant decline, then a significant recovery, and you're trying to reestablish what the normal base is. And so what this is assuming is getting back to a normal base. So we'll see how that transpires over the next fiscal year. Property tax is $69.5 million, a 2% increase. most of these are at two. I do want to point out a couple of items in intergovernmental funds. That's down 10%. That includes the gas tax, which, well, we expect to have an increase. The increase related to the state's increase in the tax, which is 2%, 2.5% per 2.5 cents a year over the next 5 years, is going to the capital fund. So what this reflects is a decline anticipating related to the census recalculation of our gasoline tax. So that's part of the decline there. There was also some reimbursements we got from juvenile that were one-time in nature, as well as refuse. In departmental fees and fines, at $58.5 million, that's down 5.4%. That is the refuse decline as well as the towing. In the C&T funds, $28 million, that's an increase of 19.7%. We did have, because the revenues outperformed this year, particularly in the hotels, we are appropriating that for next year. So that's overall a 1.5% increase in general fund revenues. On expenditures, I won't go into too much detail as I've already sort of highlighted these, but you can see in the general government category, that's 16.2%. That would reflect ITSA, the Board of Aldermen, and Department Personnel. Finance, that's the 10.8%. That's the Comptroller's office, mostly in insurance and some of those other costs. In the citywide account, at 38.8 million, 7.2% increase. That is for the bigger increase there is for the pay adjustment account that is included at $5 million. Parks and Recreation, it's mostly forestry. The bigger jump there is the forestry LRA initiative. Courts, we talked about county offices, the election board, streets, again, that includes some traffic increases, but the biggest item being there, refuse disposal, and overall, the Board of Public Services Facilities Management. So you can see it just under $540 million, it's a 5.6% increase. Now into some of the special funds, particularly the local use tax fund, just under $50 million estimate. That includes $5.1 million in their existing balances due to revenues exceeding estimates. And I'll point out a few things. You've got the continuation of some initiatives from last year, which is the affirmative. Well, first of all, you've got affordable housing at $6.5 million, which is what it was this current fiscal year, and the full $5 million and $3 million for healthcare trust fund and the $3 million for building demolition. Now, in addition to that, you've got the excess use tax fund, which includes the affirmative litigation unit of $500,000, which was a new initiative for the current fiscal year. Bulky pickup, housing conservation, but the police department, that's up $2 million. Again, as I mentioned, that was reduced when the general fund, when the other funds took a hit. The health department is up $2.2 million. They have a new behavioral health unit. They're up overall 22 positions. 1.2 million of that is for 15 positions for a new behavioral health unit, which I'm sure the Director of Health could go into detail. So in total, the budget for the local use tax is just under $50 million. In the Economic Development Sales Tax Fund, that is also allocated by ordinance. You can see those percentages there. 60% goes to transit. Other than an allocation of $1 million in the current fiscal year for continuation of the study, most of those funds have just been accumulating in that account. At the end of this fiscal year, it should have something close to $53 million. And there's another $12.7 million estimated for the coming fiscal year. Throughout in these other categories, you can see 10% goes for neighborhood stabilization, and that's in the form of PDA and CDA. I should point out that in CDA, there is a new initiative for building stabilization in the amount of $1 million, as well as $500,000 to address vacant buildings. In workforce development, that incorporates both SLATE as well as Director of Human Services. In SLATE in particular, that includes $1 million for establishing an office in North City. And then in the public safety, piece, infrastructure piece, we've got Comptroller's Office, 911 support of 400,000, SEMA mass notification of 100,000, and then BPS. There is that's 2.9 million for both SEMA sirens and the PSAP. There's studying right now about how much SEMA would need to replace the sirens citywide, or whether that's the direction to go and what costs would be involved in that. So I know that's under review at the moment. So that may be changed going forward. And then the final 10% of that fund goes into the capital fund. That's $2.1 million. In the half-cent sales tax known as Prop P, there's two components of that. There's the public safety sales tax as well as the use tax portion of that, all allocated by ordinance. 66% that goes to the police department. Includes a prior year balance of $15.6 million. 28% goes to the fire department and 6% to the circuit attorney. That's the sales tax piece. That's $23.7 million in total. Now, of the use tax piece, including some prior year balances, totaling $7.5 million overall, you've got 25% going to after school and summer jobs programs. And you can see those two initiatives there, summer jobs as well as the police cadet program. Those are similar to what we had this year. The circuit attorney is up. It's at 7.7% of the use tax, but including a $1.2 million balance, is proposing to fund a public integrity unit as well as provide funds for witness protection. That's totally $1.6 million. The recreation programs I had mentioned earlier, they included some per performance rec assistance to supplement their recreation programming. That's about $224,000 increase in that area. You still have about a building demolition piece of 17.3% of the total. That's $1 million next year. And then social work and mental health programs, it's about $2 million. I mentioned an increase in the capital fund budget, $7.3 million or 24% over the previous fiscal year, mostly driven by the sales tax recovery, as there are a number of sources of sales tax that are allocated to the capital improvements. It also includes a $1.5 million increase related to the gas tax increase. So in calculating the gas tax increase, this is net what we expect from the reduction related to census. Although the state hasn't done that yet, we do anticipate there's going to be a new formula that will be coming out within the next fiscal year that would illustrate that. And then all the capital sales tax, the portion of the half-cent sales tax for capital is allocated by ordinance, and you can see the chart below. Under, I'll start with this citywide debt. $10.7 million. That includes most of our lease debt on city buildings, including 1520 Market, Carnahan Courthouse, Juvenile, Central Industrial Garage, our NGA obligations of $1.5 million per year, our rolling stock leases, as well as the QECB, and that's the energy efficiency residential program of about $800,000 or $400,000 per year. And the other citywide capital account, $3.2 million. That's got $525,000 for bridge repair, for building repair, which I'm sure BPS will tell you that it's not enough. But hopefully we can, between this and some of the other capital improvements we've gotten, we can address some of those building repairs. We got $550,000 for ash tree removal to continue that program. We got $100,000 for ITSA equipment to supplement their budget. $550,000 for court improvements, and $1.5 million for road and bridges resulting from that $1.5 million I mentioned coming from the gas tax increase. In the ward improvement category, which I'm sure is close to everyone's heart here, that's $10.8 million. That includes $2.8 million from a beginning balance because of the revenues being better than estimated. So that's an increase of what you will have to allocate in the coming fiscal year. And then major neighborhood parks improvements, $8.6 million, and rec center improvements at $600,000. And I should point out also, I mention this often when we talk about the capital budget, is that it's always good to have other sources of funds, because when in this capital budget, there's about of the total $37.4 million, there's $6.9 million, which is in debt service. So nearly half, just under half of it is allocated, is already predetermined when you get to allocating funds. In terms of personnel changes in all funds, overall, it's an increase of 120 positions. You're going to find 95 positions added in the general fund. That includes both the Board of Aldermen, which has 19, Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, which has 11. About 10 positions were moved to corrections. I mentioned that special fund moved over to general fund. And scattered throughout, you've got Director of Public Safety has 7 additions. You've got the Civilian Oversight Board, which is up by 9. So you're going to see those scattered throughout various departments. So as you go through the departments, you'll see those. Special fund categories also up by 34. Again, that's a similar story. You're going to see those scattered throughout. That includes the biggest chunk of that would be in the health department, which was up those 22 positions. Grant funds are actually down. Most of that would be in the police department, where you had some expiring police grants. And then enterprise funds, water was up by 5 positions. And this is just illustrating the long-term trends over the last 10 or so years. There's still the general funds down about 126 positions. Special funds are actually up by about that same amount. Grant funds are down over 100 positions, but you're down about 100 positions where you were 10 years ago. Pensions, pension costs are rising about $5 million in FY23. As I mentioned earlier, the bigger change was in the police pension, which is up $4.5 million. The fire retirement system and fire retirement plan, which are 2 systems, was down $1.8 million. And the overall ERS increase, which is up by $2.2 million. Again, that's mostly a factor of the additional positions as opposed to the underlying percentage. And I just want to update you on the status of the pension systems itself. And you can see that from a funded status, we're in relatively good shape. I would say you're close to 80% funded in the on an actuarial basis, the employee retirement system. On a market basis, you're 84%. What that tells you is that there is smoothing every year. Most of the systems use a 5-year smoothing. I know FRS uses a 3-year smoothing. That means that there's some gains that have not yet been recognized. So there might be pushing up. Now, however, everyone knows what the market's doing today. That's going to be reflected later. And then when we get next year's valuation, I'm sure you're going to see some hits. So that's the kind of thing you got to be vigilant of. But it's not necessarily the funded status of the systems. It's just the cost of keeping those systems funded, which is the increase. So we're spending nearly $93 million budgeted for next year. Again, that's about a $5 million increase over the current fiscal year. And you can see on the employee retirement system, that's just under $40 million. The fire retirement system is about $15 million. And again, for the police retirement system, it's about $40 million. That includes debt payments on the outstanding debt from fiscal 2007. And there's about $104.7 million remaining in that outstanding debt. In terms of unreserved general fund balances, we've continued to make progress over the last number of years. For those who have been following over the last decade, that's been one of our challenges in getting our reserve balances back up. And that's always one of the first questions the rating agencies ask and they look at and they give a lot of weight to when they see how resilient the city would be on a financial standpoint. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, we were at $68.3 million. That's 13.4% of FY22 budget. And you can see originally we had a minimum target of 5%. We exceeded that. And then we were above the 10% threshold. The Government Finance Officers Association says a typical benchmark would be 2 months of operations, which would be about 16.5%. We're getting there. Depending on how we end up the fiscal year this year, we're getting close. That would be about 80 some odd million dollars. So we're in better shape. And again, this is all cash basis, but we are making progress there. And I think that's something that the rating agencies have noted. I did want to, because we did include some ARPA funds in this budget, I did want to illustrate where we are with the allocations. First installment, as you know, it's almost $500 million. It's 498 total. We had received last June 249 million of that. So the first installment, which is 1/2 of the total. So we should be getting shortly the second installment as well. And I just want to highlight what ordinances and allocations we've done to date. Of course, Board Bill 1 at $17.3 million. This is from last year, which it looks like we will not need to draw upon this year. So, and I'll discuss that in a second. We had the large Board Bill number 2, which was last summer of $122.9 million. Then we just had the recently approved capital improvement projects of $69.6 million. And then the North City corridors of 39. So if you take all that out, you've got, and then, I'm sorry, FY23, as I mentioned, has $19 million incorporated. And of that total, $12 million is for a one-time employee pay supplement. Of course, again, that's pending the pay plan of $12 million, the affordable housing supplement of $2 million, and a building preservation supplement of $5 million. So that's 19. Now, if we take out, just saying, all right, we're not going to draw this 17.3 that we had originally anticipated in the FY22 budget, that means total allocation would net $250 million, just slightly above half. So the balance to be allocated would be $247.6 million. So finally, the total budget, all funds at $1.23 billion. It's a 6.9% increase. The general fund of $540 million is a 5.6% increase. And I've got some of those highlights, 17.1 million in all funds to address employee pay and benefit increases, of which 13.9 million is in the general fund. We got 4.9 million on pension increase costs, 2.5 million for information systems contract management of the ERP management system, 1.9 million for waste disposal contract increase in refuse, 2.1 million in the health department, 1.5 million for CDA, building stabilization and redevelopment, 1.2 million for the circuit attorney integrity unit and witness protection, $1 million increase in the Board of Aldermen for that ward reduction in 19 positions, the $950K increase in forestry for maintenance of LRA properties, civilian increase in the Civilian Oversight Board of about $600,000, $600,000 increase Director of Public Safety for Victim Services and the new safety officer. Meanwhile, the capital budget is up at $37.4 million. It's an increase of 7.3%. It includes an increase in the gas tax revenue. And finally, while ARPA funds are included here, it is not relied upon for balancing the budget. And they remain, although I should point out, that does remain available should there be a should revenues falter later in the year. Matter of fact, we do have some language there that says, should revenue falter, we could draw up to $10 million to replenish or something. That's a safety net, I think, which is probably a good idea since you don't know. I do not anticipate that, but you always want to be prepared just in case. And that $19 million, which are included in ARPA, would be $12 million for that employee compensation piece, $2 million for affordable housing, and $5 million for building preservation. And that's the extent of the presentation. So I'll be available for questions.
Thank you very much. One of the things I'd like to do is to share with everyone as we move forward in discussing the budget, asking questions and giving opinions. I really want us to stay focused on the budget that is before us, not incidents or specific concerns that you have that can be dealt with outside of this meeting. It's going to be hard enough for us to get through this timely, and we don't want to spend a lot of our time off subject. So hopefully, as we move forward, we can keep that in mind. I do know that there was a lot put before us. Paul is going to be here with us as much as he can every day. And it's always good to make your notes so that you don't lose a thought that you have. And what I'd like to do now is to go ahead and let committee ask some questions. And also for me, if there are alderpersons who are not on this committee, today is probably the day that you really want to ask questions, because you have Paul here and you have the Board of E&A making presentations. So please put your name in the chat if you're interested. I will make sure I watch that and call on you when I'm done with the committee. So let's start with Alderman Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Paul.
Morning.
How are you this morning?
Oh, it's fabulous.
I am going to spare you 20 questions, so I only really have one, maybe 1.5, because I know you'll be here, on most days.
Right.
Paul, when you do those revenue estimates, and I want to just be specific for capital improvement for ward, and let's say you project we're all going to get, 200,000, but we really had a good year and the revenue exceeded your expectations. Do we get reallocated those funds that, let's say, were 20% over?
Yes, and in the subsequent year, because in any given year, let's say you estimate 200,000 and it ended up being 225, right?
Mm-hmm.
The following year, you'll be carrying, it's so when I talked about the beginning balance, the following year, you're getting that 25 added to whatever the next year's allocation. So let's say the next year's allocation is 250. Well, then we also have the 25 that you got extra the prior year. So that's carried forward, because here's what happens. It's not always surplus. Sometimes it's deficit. So you could have revenues that fall short. Now, I don't go back and say, oh, we got to reduce everyone's allocation. That would be too complicated when it comes to capital. So the following year, we'll take whatever your normal allocation is and reduce it by whatever the shortfall was. So it works both ways.
Okay.
And in most recent years, it's been a surplus. But if you recall, I mean, there have been years in where revenues were tanking. So, and we had to adjust downward. So, yeah. And I mentioned there's about I think on my slide, I had 2.8 million or something in beginning balances allocated on the ward accounts.
Okay. We've had to give up capital in order to kind of help balance the budget in previous years, right?
Correct.
But then we ended up with a surplus. Did we get it back? What we should have gotten?
No.
We don't. Okay. I know we did an ordinance where at the end of the year, if there's a surplus, half goes to capital and half goes to reserves, which I, think is a pretty good idea, especially with reserves. But I'm always challenged when we use capital money to help balance the budget, and then we end up with a surplus and we don't get that back. So we're kind of shortchanged, which is a little different than what you just explained. So I was wondering if we could fix that, if you will.
Yeah, you're talking about two. There's a nuance what you're talking about. We're talking about the particular stream of revenue. You're talking about when we're having, let's say, we have a recession. Or, for instance, the pandemic, where, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And typically, when you hit those, you are deferring capital. You are doing whatever you can to maintain a balanced budget. Okay, and those are the steps you take. Just in the normal process of things, if revenues exceed estimates, then let's say that deferral is not the case. And if revenues exceed estimates in the following year, you will get that surplus. Just
we will?
Yeah. Oh. You're referring to when a period where you gave it up and then it came back and maybe you didn't need to give up as much or something like that. Yeah, that one we don't revisit. But if if the sales tax, like it is this year, is exceeding estimate, you will get that benefit in the following fiscal year.
And I just thought of one other thing, and I'm gonna let you go. You had a revenue chart, and there were some estimates on it, and it was like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter.
Yep.
The first quarter looked like it was on par. The second quarter didn't have a number, or the number came in, it was like 1% or something, then it came in like 20%. You know which chart I'm talking about?
I'll share the screen and let's see what we can find here. Share. Okay, is it?
Yeah.
The sales tax?
It's the sales. It says 2.7 for the second quarter, and it was like, was projected to be negative. Explain that a little bit again.
Yeah. If you remember looking back to FY21, we, in the first quarter, we got a significant increase due to it wasn't a increased tax overall, but it was deferred taxes from FY20, because the IRS said, hey, because of the pandemic, we're going to delay when you pay in. So they delayed it, I think it was 90 days or 60 days. And so some of our receipts fell into FY21. Mm-hmm. And so we were expecting comparison between FY22 and FY21. You can't count that again in FY22 as your base, because that was a one-time occurrence. So we're expecting to see a decline, which we did see in the first quarter, but we came out stronger in the second quarter. Because I was expecting a slower recovery as the year progressed, and it was actually stronger.
Okay. Can you go to the slide that has sales revenue?
Sure.
The 1 cent, yeah. Here's, so you got 10% first quarter. We went to 29. That did really good. The second quarter was 1%, and we were 37%.
Right.
What were your thoughts about only estimating 1% in the second quarter, and it just went?
Well, that has to do with what actually came in during that period. Because if the fiscal year, when you're doing the estimate, you're looking at what you've got year to date, and if it comes up higher, then your starting base is actually lower. Your starting base increase is actually lower. So what happened was, with the sales tax, it came in higher. And so that means that compared to estimate, it was actually a lower increase by comparison. But the results, like for instance, the third quarter, it was down, and I've got all sorts of sheets I can share with you, but
you don't have to. Yeah,
but that was, it was somewhat of educated projections, educated guess in terms of how quickly this stream of revenue is going to recover from this one-time occurrence when the pandemic occurred. And so hopefully, and I mentioned this, and I'll knock on wood here, that we can start seeing normal trends again, because there's a lot of quirks that we're noticing in these last couple of fiscal years with our revenue streams.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. No further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, sir. Alderman Vaccaro.
Yeah, Paul, mine were basically on that same line. So with the tax revenue that came in, and I think I saw the list by ordinance that it goes toward capital, doesn't by just let's see what we can do. So when we don't put that right amount in, we're violating the ordinance that put that together. What percent this year have we allocated toward capital? Are we getting 100% or 80 or
you're getting? Yeah, well, in the years in which you reallocate, you do that by ordinance as well. So that, I just want to state that. But yes, you're getting your full allocation. Plus, as I mentioned to Alderman Boyd, the overage that we are projecting for this year. So you're getting $10.8 million.
So was that come up? I think I saw was up.
That was 10.8.
let me pull this up here. I'm gonna,
Paul, that comes out to what, 375,000 roughly, I think I saw.
yeah, $10.8 million. And of that,
Mhm.
2.8 is beginning balance. So you had about $8 million net.
So the 8, I'm just trying to, so the 8 million goes to ward capital then?
Well, no, the whole 10.8, you got 10.8 million to spend.
Goes
Right.
to, okay, and so that's divided by the 28 wards?
That's correct.
Right.
And so how much does that come out to this year in the wards? How much is the ward capital this year? Is it
That's about 385.
385. And then we still got the half-cent sales tax, right? The streets and curbs, I think that was Prop S, whatever it was. So, okay, well, I mean, that really was my question is that, you know, that an accurate number? Because like I said in the past, even though by ordinance, they've kind of taken ward capital away. And then when people complain about, well, the roads aren't being paved or sidewalks aren't getting done, you could point directly at this. This was put in back under the Bosley administration, if I'm correct, to make sure that the wards got money so that they can get things done. So, you know, so I guess that was my question really was, you can unshare the screen. So that was my question, Paul. So 100% of the money's been allocated. So we're not using it. Obviously, we don't have to balance the budget. And then I'm trying to remember, was Prop S or whatever it was, the half-cent sales tax that went to not ward capital, but streets and sidewalks and curbs. What's that going to be this year per ward?
St. Louis Works, you're referring
Yes.
to?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
That's typically around $5 million per year. I have not seen that. Actually, I'm curious about that. I have not seen that.
I mean,
appropriation.
I'm curious myself.
Let me correct something I said as well. That 10.8 million, 9.4 is the base, 1.4 million is the beginning balance. I overstated that because so your 50% is equal to 9.4, and then 1.4 is the beginning balance from this year excess revenues.
Okay. And then the other, St. Louis Works, whatever.
St. Louis Works, that's typically around 5 million per year.
What?
Or
Because I'm trying to
slightly
figure
north.
my budget this year. I mean, I'm going into my budget hearing in about 2 weeks. And I certainly like to have a good idea of what, where it needs to go, what we need to spend. When will we find the St. Louis Works money out then?
That usually goes through a separate appropriation. I don't know if that has been introduced or not. But it's not part of this budget.
Okay, well, I mean, that was my other just curious question. So, well, that would be all my questions. And Paul, I have a bunch of other questions, but I'll wait. As time goes on, I'll come up with them. I'm writing them down. But anyway, other than that, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Alderwoman Howard, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Payne. I appreciate your presence here and your detailed explanation of the budget. You mentioned, I guess what I need to know, past history being on this committee, we talked about reserve funds. And, for years we had no reserve funds. How is the fiscal health of the city as far as reserve and our bonding capacity? Does that, I know it affects our bonding capacity, but how are we as far as reserves?
As I mentioned on that one slide about reserves, we have been gradually increasing over the last few years. We you go back to FY17, it was getting pretty tight on a cash basis. Here's what happened. If you look back to the last recession.
You want to look at the slide?
Oh, here, sure.
Because I don't know. I must have been distracted. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Let's see. Here we go. Now this goes back to FY12. Which was actually after the last recession. But you can see, if I went back further, what we did, there was a big draw in I think it was 9 or 10 fiscal, where we actually drew $18 million down following that recession. Again, that was a severe recession. And then what's notable about it is that it took so long to get out of that. And so you would expect to see growth and recovery and all that, but it was 10 years or more before we started seeing gradual increases in that, or significant increases in our fund balance. But having since then, so if you go back to FY20, you started to see the bigger recovery. And as I mentioned, originally we said we'd never get below 5%. We are actually below that after the last recession of the budget. Now we've exceeded 10, and Government Finances Officers Association establishes about 2 months worth of expenses as a key benchmark. And we're getting close to that. So from a standpoint, and again, this is all cash basis, but from that standpoint, we're actually doing much better than we were.
Okay, we're still not on the fat and sassy road, but we're doing much better.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now I have another question, and that is, you mentioned something about, ARPA funds, 12 million for supplemental compensation. And that was probably in the last slide.
Yeah,
and can you give me a little more information about what you meant about that? I think it was 12 million, but it was for supplemental compensation. I don't remember. I may be wrong on the exact number.
Yes.
But it was tied to the ARPA funds.
Yes. Okay. There that is. All the FY23 proposal includes $19 million in ARPA funds related to these three items. $12 million of that would be a pay supplement. But that's, again, pending a pay plan. So, and given that it's ARPA, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, finish.
Given that it's ARPA, it would not be in the form of something that would be recurring, I wouldn't expect. So, but that's the proposal.
So that would be sort of a one-time incentive for all current employees. Is that what
I would expect that to be the case? In some,
okay. I mean, I know you speak for.
Again, as you know, that it's dependent upon a pay plan, obviously, but that would be what the proposal would be.
So just speculating. I know it's not written in the stone, but how much would that come out per employee?
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to even go there until there's actually.
Okay. Okay. I'm just curious. So this is proposed, and it would depend on the division of personnel to put that through their board, et cetera, right?
Correct.
Oh, and submit their pay plan. Is the pay plan due along with the budget, or does that come whenever they get ready?
Well, it should be done prior to the start of the fiscal year. I mean, it's typically around this time of year, but it is separate from the budget. Okay.
I won't go into that anymore because it's sort of off topic. So, but thank you. That's all I have. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for this today.
Okay. Alderwoman Spencer. I didn't see her earlier. Okay, I'm going to move on to Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, you probably should just kept your screen up because they keep asking you questions and you say, okay, pull the screen.
Yep. Have it up in a second if you like.
So thank you so much, because you are so honorable when we go through these budget hearings. So I really appreciate you, and you're very patient with us. And I think my only question, because I understood the part about what Alderwoman Howard had asked about the employees and the raises, but I guess, and it might be a crazy question, is that including the 3%, or is this in addition to?
That, my understanding, that would be in addition to.
Okay, that's the one question. And then the second question is, I saw where you had, we had dollars going to Tower Grove Park and another park. Are these private parks? Like, I mean, are these funds going like it is with Forest Park?
Well, there's Tower Grove Park gets funds in the general fund, where we every year have a subsidy, and it's about what, $735,000 or something like that. That's just the general fund operating subsidy. And they also get share of the half-cent sales tax for major parks, but that's formula driven by ordinance. And so they get the half-cent sales tax. They also, as a major park, they get a share of the 3/16 and the 10th cent as well.
Okay, and so I guess my third question, because I was kind of confused. I know in the police budget, they have about witness protection or something with, protecting the witness. And then in the circuit attorney, they have the same thing. They have the witness protection. So I'm kind of confused. Why do both of them have the same thing from different departments? Are they partnering and taking those dollars for one program, or are these two different programs?
Yeah, that one I'd have to defer to Director of Public Safety as well as the Circuit Attorney's Office in terms of how they integrate the two initiatives.
Okay, and that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderman Oldenburg.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, thanks for the presentation. I do want to actually give you good compliments on the reserves. You were crying chicken little about 12 years ago on that, and through the pay reserve strategy that you employed, along with scraping from other places, we built that up over the last 9 or 10 years. So congratulations, honestly, on that. That is really important, and I do want to commend you and your team for that. I had a question regarding the pensions. You talked about, I think that they were up overall, but most of that was attributed to the police pension, the cost of the police pension. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So overall, the increase was just shy of 5 million.
Yep.
Police were 4.6 of that. Is that correct?
4.5.
4.5. Okay. And do we have any idea what that's a function of specifically?
Sure. In the prior year, they had an experience study. About every 5 years or so, a pension system will review its set of assumptions. And the big assumptions that really affect a pension system are the assumed rate of return. That's the biggest one. And then that's how much you expect to earn, because it does two things. And I think they were at 7.5 and they lowered it to 7, right? Because they say, hey, going forward, this is what we expect. That affects a pension system two ways. One, it tells you it tells the actuary what to assume in earnings going forward. But it also tells the actuary how to discount the liabilities. So if your rate is high and not realistic, so to say, you are anticipating greater earnings, and you're under counting your liabilities, and so has a big impact on the systems and contributions and such. Yep.
Okay. And then the fire pensions were down by 1.8 million. That's
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And that's both FRP and FRS collectively, the savings?
Yes.
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 Okay. Got it. That's great. That's great. my next question is around the citywide capital. You broke that down a little bit, but I think is a 3.2 million. Hang on.
For other citywide, there's debt
Yeah.
service of about 10.7.
Yeah, not the debt service, the other citywide category. You had that, you kind of went through that 3.2. Can you just break down what those assumptions are?
Yeah, it was 525,000 for building repairs, municipal building repairs, 550,000 for ash tree removal.
Yep.
100,000 for information systems equipment, $550,000 for courthouse repairs, and then $1.5 million for road and bridge projects.
Got it. Okay. Great. Thank you. And then regarding, and I appreciate the slide that you inserted here around the use of ARPA funds and how it's compatible with the budget. That was very helpful. Just going to that very quickly. Well, is it in there? What slide is that, Paul? Sorry.
Let me see here. I can pull it up. Yeah.
Because it may not have been in the one that's in our Google Drives.
Oh, that one in the Google, that might also be the one I presented to E&A. I'll make sure you've got, because there were reflected the amendments. So
that would be great, because that was a real helpful slide. So
yeah,
if you make sure at the end of this we get that. No worries. But on that slide that you had or showed, I think you had this budget has $19 million of ARPA funding incorporated in.
Yeah, that was where if you look at the slide, it says pending, because that's our board bill 1 now. And those are the components there, right? Got it.
Okay. And the $2 million, yeah, there it is. Thank you. The $2 million for the affordable housing supplement. Have there been conversations, and this may need to just happen, but I worry about making sure that that gets spent ahead of where the trust balance is to date, right?
Yeah.
You have to expend ARPA funds, we know, by the end of 2026, correct?
Yeah, and that's actually a very good point. Yeah, I would expect that given the time constraints, you'd want to spend your ARPA funds first and then go through the others. So yeah, that's a good.
So that's something I think this committee needs to, Madam Chair, make sure we underscore and highlight when we're speaking to the Affordable Housing Trust and our final number there, that somehow we make sure that the sort of these last dollars into them is earmarked to first go out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And one of the things that I know that the directors of the departments that deal with that are thinking the same way. They're out looking for shovel-ready projects so that ARPA money can be spent right away. We don't want to assume that we're going to find projects, create them, and have the money appropriated and or spent in 2 years. So you really got to look for projects that are ready to go.
Right. Yep. Okay. That's great. The other, just my last kind of comment or question, maybe just for this committee to make sure that we think through, is around what others have brought up around the $12 million of compensation, which probably is going to be a one-time incentive, I assume, somewhere between, I don't know, $950 to $1,500, who knows, give or take. I'm making assumptions here, but I do want to make sure that I know that the bargaining agents still haven't finished negotiating a lot of their contracts and agreements with the city. So I don't know how thoughtful it is to kind of be ramming that through at a time where those conversations are still happening. So I just want to caution our committee as we move forward in that discussion and in approving the overall budget with the full board. So Madam Chair, that's all I got for now. Paul, thanks again. Hey, congrats again on the reserves, my friend.
Thank you.
We're getting there.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Paul. My questions have been asked and answered, so thank you.
All right. Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, I have no questions at this time. I've been listening, and quite a few of my questions have also been answered.
Okay. I just checked. There's no one in the chat. I was looking for other alderpersons that might want to ask a question, and I don't see anybody. For me, Paul, I just have a couple of things very quickly. Could you please give an additional statement to explain how you, as actual as people would like a budget to be, and it also has some forecasting in it. And that's where your monitoring process continues throughout the year, because on occasions there will be a need to adjust. Can you explain all of that? Because sometimes people come back and they want to argue about a specific dollar amount that was indicated in the budget, but based on how we receive our revenue, a lot of it is forecast. So can you explain your formula and kind of how you get at these numbers?
Sure. Basically, once the budget's passed, we track on a monthly basis how we're doing on mostly the revenues as well as the expenditures on a payroll basis. You know that on a biweekly payroll basis as well. Some of I think where it's most noticeable when you've got a year in which revenues are either close or exceeding estimates. We have a mechanism by default that addresses that, and that's basically if you've exceeded estimates, then you've got a one-time balance at the end of the year. So if it's a one-time balance, what is a proper one-time expense? We'd allocate it to capital or we'd allocate it to the fund balance. That's a very sound policy, and I think we've stuck to that quite some time now. On the flip side, on the flip side, and this is where it really gets tricky, is what do you do if revenues are trailing? And we've seen that a number of times, several recessions. And I can just remember specifically in FY, I think it was 09 or something, where
08?
Calendar 08, but that's FY09.
Okay.
Yeah, where sometimes you see revenues and they're close, and no, it's okay, we're close enough. But that year, first quarter, I said, we've got a problem. You just saw it. And that's the kind of thing where that was the year, you may remember this, where we actually had to take action mid-year to plug that gap, and we still drew down fund balance. So it's the kind of thing, this most recent pandemic was unusual in that no one knew what to do when the economy has never been shut down like it was going in. And I'd call up other cities and say, hey, what do you, we're doing it. No one had a particular game plan for this. It was something that was new. So if you recall, what we did was we said, okay, we're going to take this big a hit on revenues, and then we should see a gradual increase over time. And then fortunately, last year, we did see the big drop. We see an unprecedented drop of revenues, but the recovery also was stronger than was anticipated. So I expect that that's what you're seeing this year. Is this coming fiscal year going to be more normal? You hope. You hope we don't have any unpleasant surprises, and there's nothing that upsets the going forward. Now, with inflation being what it is, that's another new factor. One thing, it may drive some revenues like sales tax and such, but then there's also whispering, hey, with the Fed's tightening, we may see another recession. And that was remote just a few months ago, but now you're hearing a little bit more about it. So you don't know, but as you said, you just gotta keep watching. And there are canaries that you look at in the cave, particularly the sales tax is a good one. Earnings tax and payroll tax are usually lagging indicators because you don't usually have layoffs early on. And then property taxes even later. So there are certain indicators you look at. I would say probably sales tax being one of them to indicate whether or not you're doing well or whether or not you've got an issue.
Well, I do appreciate you because I've learned a lot in watching and working with you on this budget. And I do know that you are so vigilant that you keep us in a place where the city can function without some of the disasters I know about in other cities taking place. So when we can still keep the lights on, meet payroll, there was those couple of times in that fiscal year that you just mentioned where we did have to ask employees to give up a, what was it, 2-week salary?
It was furloughs, yeah. You're right.
Furloughs. And we all did it. All of us did it. But that was a smart decision versus laying off people. So everybody still had the opportunity to work. And as you're continuing to do that on our behalf, most people don't understand how important that is. And it's not about who you like or who you don't like or what your philosophy is. It's about the numbers and the factual consequences. So I appreciate you. What I'd like to do now is to take, I'm sorry, I meant to check. Is President Reed on? Yeah, let me see.
He should be joining at 10:30, Madam Chair.
10:30, okay. And the reason I said that is because I had been rude in the beginning because technically this is his board bill. And I should have really called on him first, but he'll have an opportunity to talk at 10:30. So I appreciate that. So let us move on. We have next on our agenda, the Comptroller. And if Madam Comptroller, if you are ready, and your staff, I know that we have a summary that was sent to us in your Google Drive so that you'll have that available to you. And Madam Comptroller, if you're ready.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I don't see her
that's
listed
what I
yet.
was just looking for.
Mhm.
Let's see.
They were scheduled at 10:30.
Oh, okay. Okay, I still need to give them
Maybe
a few
about-
more minutes.
Right. Mhm.
Because usually folks are on a little early.
Mhm.
Okay. Why don't we get why don't we give our committee, does anybody else have a burning question that you could ask Paul at this moment? You got about 8 minutes here we're going to work with. And just feel free to open your mic and go right ahead.
Apparently he did such a good job. He was so informative that we don't have a question.
I can agree with you on that, Alderman Vaccaro. The slides, we could definitely understand. They weren't that complicated, but had a lot of factual information. So I agree with you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Paul.
Go right ahead, sir.
Paul, there you are. Maybe I missed this because you're so thorough. But with the ward reduction and going back to capital, how will the city reallocate those capital funds just for those 3 short months. What's it? May, June, July, May. Yeah, those that last quarter.
That's actually a very good question. Because it's not only those 3 months, but it's going to be any balance that's there as well.
Correct.
Right? Because not everything is going to go out the door. I have thought about that as well. I'm not sure what that particular answer is. It might be you just look at the particular boundaries where they are and you do a percentage of those that are not encumbered. Obviously, if it's encumbered for an existing contract, you got to finish that. But I'm assuming that you could probably do something with mapping that says, okay, based on this allocation, any unspent funds or unallocated funds would be going to this geographic territory or that geographic territory, and that's how you would do it. I don't think I'd be the person to talk about how that could be done from a mapping.
I don't think it's equitably distributed from the get-go. It's ever been equitably distributed anyway. And I think we should have always used geography, like how many, miles of alleys and streets you have versus each ward get the same amount, because you have some ward that's so compact and contiguous, like, the 28th ward, where they don't have as many alleys and streets as the 22nd, for example, or the 2nd ward, and so on and so forth. So the way we have it now is a broken system. So I think this is an opportunity for us to really think about that. How do we make it more equitable? So, thank you.
That was a really good question. Wow. So make a list of all those departments that we need to ask that question to.
Maybe we should ask it at our budget meetings when we meet with the departments.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I think that the Board of Public Service and probably even the main ones that we deal with, like streets, and it might be, I like what you talked about, the fact that the geography is so different. Because when I look at my map, I'm drawn all over the city, so I definitely got more. So that's interesting. I thank you for that question. Anybody else? Well, I'm going to go back to.
I may have a quick follow up to that. I mean, I guess my concerns are if you're talking about allocated, unallocated funds, a lot of them are going to be allocated. I always spend 100% of my budget. I have nothing left. But then it's going to go to this new configuration. What about projects that are allocated but not even started? Are they going to just take all that back? And so
once the funds are allocated, you can't take them back unless you change the project.
They did that. They did that back during the recession. They went back into everybody's ward capital, if you remember, and took back money that wasn't projects that were not started. I remember that plain as day because I was upset about it.
Well, that was an emergency, but what I think we can do now, we have plenty of time. If we want to make sure that those projects that have been allocated are finished, we can definitely put something in place as legislators to make sure that those projects are finished.
Yeah,
because those are promises that have been made to our constituency, and those projects should be carried out. That was a different circumstance that we just didn't have any choice. We were trying to make it.
Well, I just think it's going to be really interesting because you could allocate something that hadn't got started. And then when the new ward gets put in place, the alderperson for that new ward can change everything and say, well, no, I'm not going to do that project.
Well,
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
like I said, we have time. We need to look at that and put something in place to protect, because technically you're protecting the residents' desires. We spend capital money based on the things that are needed out of basic repair, but also out of the request of the citizenry. So you definitely want to make sure that you carry them out if the funds have been allocated.
I've seen it when you get a new alderperson that comes in, when an old one goes out, and they stop some of the projects that, you know, and change things to what they feel are more important. So it's going to be interesting.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, I because I have never experienced that, I don't even understand why somebody would do that, because the residents stay the same. The alderpersons might change, and so their requests and needs should be carried out. And so I see that some members of the Comptroller's office has signed on. And Madam Comptroller, as soon as you're ready, feel free to go ahead and make your presentation. We welcome you to the Ways and Means Committee. Deputy Comptroller, I see you're online.
You on here yet?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. How is everyone this morning?
Good morning. How are you, Latanya?
I'm doing good, Alderwoman Davis.
I am always happy to see and hear from you. You have that energy, and I like that. And you're always ready to make sure that things are absolutely perfect. So I like that.
All right, Miss Alderwoman Davis, how can I help you?
Thank you. Will the comptroller be joining us?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, thank you.
And several others. I don't know who's on the call yet.
Yeah, I see about 4 people from your department over there online already.
Okay.
Good morning, Alderwoman.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. The comptroller is going to be joining in just a moment. She should be logging in right now.
Thank you very much, sir.
Logging in. Am I on? Oh, I am. Look at that. Okay, cool.
Welcome, madam. How are you
Good
today?
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you guys.
So, Madam Comptroller, we are ready for you. You may
Okay,
start your
then.
presentation and follow through however you like.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members of the board and of the Ways and Means Committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to give you just a little briefing of the budget for the Comptroller's office. I'm going to take you back to fiscal 22, the fiscal year that we're operating in now, to tell you that the current budget is $11.3 million for the total budget for the Office of the Comptroller, and we're operating with a full-time position staffing of 98. Of course, all of those positions aren't filled, but for the fiscal year of 2022, that's what we're authorized for. And now as we move into the fiscal 23 budget, our budget has increased slightly by $1.6 million and the new total budget for fiscal 23 is $12.9 million. And that's a slight increase, as I mentioned, with also an increase in the staffing authorization. And the staffing authorization is, instead of 98, it is now 102 staff. We believe we do need the slight increase of 4 additional employees as we move into the new fiscal year. We have quite a bit more projects to have accounting for. We have a lot of fund accounts to set up. We have quite a bit, as you could imagine, with all of the federal dollars that's coming in, and there's a lot of accounting that has to happen in order to keep track of those dollars. So that is the brief version of my budget for fiscal 23. As you can see, it's a very small increase over the last fiscal year. The largest increase comes from the raises that will be happening citywide, and we have taken account of those things in the budget, along with the additional positions, of course, of which I mentioned to you. And of course, you know, you have the line items that also have increased in a major way in terms of the surety bonds, insurance, telecommunication line charges. Those are just kind of the highlight of where our main increases are that will be taking you from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23 in terms of why our budget is increasing in those areas. In particular, I would say those increases are due to inflation, especially the insurance, the telecommunications, because we are seeing a lot of savings in the telecommunications area overall. But the actual charges and the increase that we're seeing now have to do with inflation in those areas. So I'm gonna, stop here and allow you to ask any questions that you would like. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start with Alderman Boyd. Okay, I'll come back to Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro.
Yeah, no questions at this point.
Okay. Alderwoman Howard.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I thought I saw Alderwoman Spencer, you with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just getting settled in here. I was able to hear the last bit of the presentation, but I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Boyd.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Comptroller, for that presentation. And I want to also thank you because in the past, you were the only ones that we always smiled at that said, I'm cutting my staff. I'm trying to work within the perimeter. And so I do understand that the way things are going, that you do need to add. And so I'm honored to hear what your presentation is. And if it's anything we can do, let us know.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Alderwoman. Appreciate it.
Okay. Alderman Oldenburg.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Comptroller. Just a couple of quick questions around some specifics regarding the accounting and controls that you hope to implement with the use of ARPA. You spoke about increasing staff. What can you just real quick give me drill down a little bit on what you envision sort of is the accounting and control strategies for that? Is it just more bodies, or is there kind of a specific accounting policy that you're adopting as it relates to the ARPA funds?
Well, as it relates to the ARPA funds, number one, there's more dollars. There's more money to be accounted for. There's more monies to count. You see what I'm saying? So that's off the top. And we need more people in order to do the job just from that basic standpoint. And when you talk about projects that ARPA's money will be able to create, we've got all of these master plans. All of those require, as you know, Tom, accounting. And so somebody's got to be there to open up the special account for XY, special account for ABC, special account for. And, you know, we have had in the past, we struggled to have enough money to do several projects, but now we are not struggling. And now we just have to have the staff to actually do the work. So that's the strategy in terms of why we need the extra people so that the work can get done. So when you aldermen, because you know we have 28 accounts, one for each of you for capital, just for example. And so that's just one thing that, you know, we already have accountants handling that. Now we've got millions of ARPA money. Then we got on top of the millions of ARPA money, millions of NFL money. And so somebody's going to say, well, Comptroller, we need you to set up a special account. And so one special account after another special account after another special account after another special account after another special account means bodies. So that's why we need them, because we have to be accountable, especially for the federal dollars that are coming in. And it's critical that we find the personnel. And then on top of that, so I said that was number one. But number two, we've got this new accounting system. Oracle's is the base of it, and it started March the 1st, and which is an odd time to start in the middle of a fiscal year, but nonetheless, it happened. And so we are going to be finding out just how much our capabilities are with the people we have. We already know that we would definitely be helped by having extra bodies to go out throughout the city departments to teach them how to use it. And so I've been talking about that with my staff, because the staff that I have, we critically need them in-house. But then there's somebody in forestry, there's somebody in refuse, there's somebody in the health department, there's somebody in human services that also need our assistance on how to get familiar with the new system. Even the folks at the airport, and I understand my staff was not too long ago at the airport trying to get them acclimated to the new system. So that's our number 2 reason for more staff.
That's great. So thank you very much for that. So if I understood correctly, I mean, it's really, there's not kind of the implementation of a new accounting policy or augmenting your accounting policies per se, but it is sheerly capacity, more bodies to do the accounting, plus help stand up the new accounting system, right?
And I would say policy is inherent in that because we have the new system. So whenever you have a new system, then you're going to be creating policy and procedures that fit around those needs.
Got it. Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
All right. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions.
Okay. Alderwoman Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, only to state that I appreciate the work that Comptroller Green is doing, and I look forward to working with her and seeing her continue to do what she does best.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Okay. I just had a couple of questions very quickly here. One is, I do know that, and I just read that the Treasurer's Office for the ARPA dollars on the federal level, they're putting together the compliance part of it where you'll have additional oversight. So I see that you're just going to have a ton of additional work required dealing with the ARPA funds. And I was wondering have we really captured enough people? Because now you'll have to also have an additional staffing because we got some joint RFPs that are dealing with ARPA funds. So that would have to be looked at separately. And I just want to make sure you know that you have enough people that you've requested. I got a little confused when I saw that and I thought about it. I just want to ask you to, and I know you're very thorough, but have a second thought as we're going through this process.
I appreciate that, Alderwoman, Madam Chair, and we will be looking at our needs as we go forward. We're starting out with the additional 4 that we think that we definitely could use. And like you said, it may require more. And as we delve into the new fiscal year, we'll find whether or not we will need more.
Okay. And we forgot we've got more money coming for infrastructure. So those funds haven't got here yet either.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a good thing to have money that can be spent on behalf of the city. So this is great. I wanted to thank you and your staff for sending us the snapshot version of the budget, because it's something that we can use and share with our neighborhood organizations as well. And it won't be that difficult for them to understand when they look at it. So I do appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
All righty. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us or any other staff members?
Any staff want to share anything?
Madam Chair, I had a question.
Oh, sure. Go right ahead, Alderwoman.
Good morning, Comptroller Green.
Good morning.
I see, I understand your need for additional staff. I guess my concern is, and I know you might not have an answer, is that in this tight market of employment, will you be able to hire these 4 people that probably have some specialized skills that you're going to need?
That's going to be our problem. Is going to be trying to find the people.
And do you think you're going to be able to offer competitive salaries?
Our salaries are not as good as we would like them to be, and that's why that's one of our problems. But working with personnel, we're going to do the best that we can.
Okay, great. And then one more question. Are these going to be, I mean, right now we have an influx of funds with the ARPA funds and so forth. These will be long-term positions that will stay on. It won't just be a temporary.
These
need?
are anticipated to be long-term. I will tell you the number of staff is, since I've been the comptroller, has hovered around the 100 staffing mark. 102 is not that much more than what we have had in the past. So we, over the years, has been able to operate with under 100. But when I started, it was roughly this amount in the past. And as the chairwoman mentioned, normally the comptroller's office will come and try to cut staff. And we've been very successful cutting staff. But at this time, it turns out that with the extra work that's going to be required, along with the new accounting system, we are adding at this time.
And one more question. The new accounting system at this time is fully operational?
It is online. That's the lingo.
Okay. Okay.
It is online. Fully operation, is what we believe.
It's the learning curve, I guess.
Yes.
So, okay. Well, thank you so much. It seems like it was a smooth transition. I know we had a few little delays in some things, but it seems like things are moving along. So thank you so much for your work, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other alderpersons that you've thought of something else that you needed to ask?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller, for your presentation. This may not be your question, but I've been so frustrated for many years about our IT and how all the departments communicate with each other. Are we budgeting funds to create a better system on how the departments communicate? As you talk about, the accounting system has been very important of upgrading that.
You are absolutely right, Alderman. That is not my question. Okay. You definitely need to check with that department to get a better answer or something that would be that they would be aware of. I'm unaware.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome.
Okay. Any other alderpersons?
Madam Chair, I had one more. Madam Comptroller, I know that you have been real vocal about ensuring that the dollars that we are allocating are done expediently to ensure that people don't have to wait a long period of time from residents to non-for-profits. And so I know we're trying to work on this whole Prop S thing, and I'm getting a lot of calls from the non-for-profits. So do we look at how we can make this streamlined, make it a simpler process in regards to them receiving their, funding for their projects?
I think what you can do is call my office and we can talk to the departments, individuals that are sending that information to our office for distribution of, the check or what have you. A lot of times you'll find that those vouchers are sitting in somebody's office or and they haven't made it to the comptroller's office yet. And so we can look at the process and see how we can be helpful.
Okay, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Anyone else? Hearing none, Madam Comptroller, would you like to close?
I will. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you for having me today to give a brief briefing of our budget for fiscal 23. I look forward to that year being a good, productive year for the city of St. Louis and for all of us. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I thank you for your presentation. We know we're in good hands. And as we move forward, one of the things that I picked up on listening to another city going through the same process is that the only thing that we should do is to continue to wear, if not even get a tattoo that says we are going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to our to the committee, what I wanted to share with you is as we move forward, we will have with the various departments. I want to thank our clerk, Terry Kennedy, for making sure that more time is allowed so that we can be as thorough as possible with our interactions and we're not rushed. So I want you to always feel free. I'm going to always do at least 2 rounds, but if it's a burning question, please get my attention, either raising your hand and or between speakers, letting me know that you'd like to ask an additional question. We now have scheduled for 11 o'clock our mayor, and we will be, well, we got a few minutes here. Was there any other questions that someone may have thought of for Paul?
I do.
Go right ahead, sir.
Madam Chair, we rarely have the IT department come. And so I thought I'd just ask Paul this question because he knows that budget book back and forwards. Paul, have we allocated additional monies to upgrade our networking system so that each department can communicate effectively across the same platform?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the networking system. Again, I'd have to defer to that. It's on the details of that. But in anticipation of the new accounting system, I know we did upgrade some of the equipment related to that. So
yeah, but
when you say you're talking about just the strength of signal or time?
No, just a better system in how they communicate and how information goes from one department to the next.
Yeah, I do know prior, of course, this year we did have the new ERP system and all that. But prior to that, we did purchase some equipment, but I don't know whether it addresses what you're referencing.
Okay. Not really, but it's okay.
Okay. One of the things, okay. I wanted to ask our clerk. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Everybody's sending me messages. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So now we have changing the schedule. The mayor is going to come on at 11:30, and we're going to have our president of the Board of Aldermen come on at 11. So, but I wanted to also say to you, I do believe we have IT scheduled to come before us, and I'll ask the clerk to confirm that for me. I'm not ready to go in and look for it into Google, but I think that I saw it.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I believe they're scheduled for June 2nd.
Okay, great. Because I see that we got some questions for them. So this is good. Because I got one. For me, every city employee should have an email. I look for employees sometimes that I want to have a conversation with. They don't have an email listed. So that's good that they're going to come before us. So if our president of the Board of Aldermen is ready earlier, we're ready to receive him.
Madam Chairman, I'm logged in. I'm just waiting for Thomas Shepard to log in. Both he and I were running from a previous meeting, we heard that you would be ready earlier for us, so we vacated that meeting, and both of us made our way here. So I know he is, probably within 10 minutes from being online. And he has all of the budget documents for the Board of Aldermen to talk through what he worked on with the clerk and Paul Payne and members of the board, put together based on some of the salary studies that were done during redistricting, right? So again, he's due to log in here shortly.
Mr. President, what I'd like to do while we're waiting for him, and I've already mentioned this to my committee, is out of proper protocol, this is your board bill. So what we'd like to do is to have you open this board bill for us. We started with the committee process, but this is a time where you should open with your board bill, with your expectations, your priorities, and then when time gets on, you can present your department budget, if you don't mind.
Okay. First thing that I did not get an opportunity to see Paul's presentation earlier, but when he gave it to the committee members, but if it mirrored what he gave to the Board of E&A, it was a really thorough presentation that laid out where we are financially, some of the challenges that he had in putting together the budget, projects, revenue, cash flow, that we should expect, and how COVID has impacted us, and what we should expect this upcoming year. He did just a phenomenal job in doing that and covering it. And I think he's, like in other years, he did a great job in really working through the projections for this year and working to get the departments down to realistic budgets all the way across the board. I'd like that, he's paid more attention to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and some of these other items that every year we hear a call for that. There may be some additional requests that may come to the board in terms of additional support for Affordable Housing Trust Fund, just based on what I'm hearing out there. And I think that considering all that the city's been through, we rely on hospitality really heavily in the city of St. Louis as a major part of our overall economy. And when the hospitality industry is hurt or is down, our entire city feels the brunt of that. So anytime we see our hotels take a hit like they've been taking, we're still looking at that convention center deal to see how that will help us into the future. It's good that the Blues are doing well now. And some of those things, all of those types of things help increase revenue in downtown. The anticipation of Major League Soccer in downtown, that's obviously playing a role and will play a bigger role as we enter into, or go throughout this budget year. So all other things being, I guess what I'm saying is all other things being equal, we are in okay shape. We're not in best shape, but, just like me, I'm looking at some of all the men and women that are logged in. A lot of you all have seen worse years also. You've seen us in much worse shape during the housing downturn and some of those things when we did not have federal funding in the term, in the way that we see in infrastructure funding and ARPA funding coming to the city to help us bridge the gap and help us keep things moving throughout our city and provide relief to our neighborhoods and the communities that so desperately need them. So, and the other thing is, I think it's important to underscore that no budget is a perfect budget. Every budget that has ever come before the city, you can find issues in it, things that you may not like or may not agree with. But that's the nature of a budget. When we look at, and that just doesn't hold for the city of St. Louis, that holds for every municipality across this country, that the overall budget covers so many various different aspects of what happens in the city and all the moving parts within the city. There's always, areas that you would agree with and not agree with. So I think what's important is just look on balance and say on balance, overall, does this meet our needs? Does it meet the needs of the residents of the city of St. Louis? And does this keep our city whole and on sound financial footing? And this budget does that. And it does that because of Paul Payne and his staff. They've done just such a tremendous job of working through all of the details of this thing along the way. Now, I would expect that this committee will have some additions and deletions and changes that you all will recommend. And those will come from your discussions with the departments, doing a much deeper dive than what we had the opportunity to do at E&A. When it comes to the Board of Aldermen, that's the time where you all really dive into the details with each and every one of these departments and can do a deeper dive than what we have an opportunity to do. So I'm looking forward to that process, and it's a lot of hard work, and I'm telling all of you, thank you on the front end for the time that you're about to put in to ensure that we have a good sound budget moving forward. And Madam Chair, I'm going to text Tom to see how far out he is. Hold on for a second. Give me 1 second. Perfect. Time is 2 minutes, about 2-3 minutes out, he said. So he should be logging in a couple minutes, and we can begin going over that the Board of Aldermen's budget, which is, typically the quickest, easiest budget to go through in city government compared to some of these other departments that you all will be looking at. And I will make a couple other recommendations, even though, like, for example, Great Rivers Greenways, they're not technically a city department, but some of the things that they are doing in terms of enhancements throughout the city on, bringing alternative transportation needs to neighborhoods throughout the city, I think that would be a good presentation to have, because it will inform some of your other decisions within some of the departments, right? If you know some of these other overarching plans that are being supported by other initiatives outside of the general fund. So I think that that would be a really good one to look at. And there are a couple other entities like that that I think it would be good for Ways and Means to have a presentation from. And, prior to passing out the budget, I think it would be very helpful. And there are probably some others that some of the other older people know about that would be really helpful to have some presentations from, so that, as you're looking at some of these things within these other departments that may impact, or if you tweak it a little bit, it can greatly enhance some of the other things that are happening in and about and around the city. So I would recommend that, and I'll also introduce and get with the chairperson, get with you, Madam Chairman, on any other entities like that I think will be helpful to hear from during the course of this meeting, these meetings coming up. And Tom should be logging in here shortly. We're trying to get in early so that we can use this time that you all had in the middle of the schedule. We appreciate you all, instead of taking a break for 30 or 40 minutes. We appreciate you all letting us bump up our time and get in here a little bit early.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's better to keep the continuance going. And I wanted to ask our clerk if he would please make note of the request for Great Rivers Greenway. And that's a great idea, because as we move forward, most especially when we get to infrastructure money and working with the street departments with some of the things that that project will touch, it's good for us to have an overall view of that. So I appreciate that suggestion.
And East West Gateway does a where we are. It's called Where We Are, or State of the Region. Just this huge comprehensive report annually. And the report covers everything from mobility, from what's the makeup of the city of St. Louis, how we are in our region also, and how we rank against other like cities, right? What type of trends are they seeing in other cities that we are experiencing here or may be experiencing here? It has a ton of socioeconomic data and everything in it. And it's a very comprehensive report, but the presentation that they give is a very compact presentation. So the presentation is one that could be given here at Ways and Means that would be massively informative to the committee members, especially given the fact that there's a lot of talk about the infrastructure dollars being largely moved through East West Gateway. So it's, so it'd be really informative to have them come now and talk to that, but also talk to, do a update on where we are. And I see Tom has joined us.
Okay. And to add to that very quickly is Greater St. Louis Inc., because I just saw where they came into partnership with the city on some programming that we need done. And they are doing more and more of that. And so I don't know if all the aldermen are aware of that. I follow it. I track it a lot and have attended some meetings. So that fits in as well. And so you're really giving some, so you're putting that thought, got that mind working now. Like that. Okay.
All right. And I want to tell you all, thank you one more time for letting us squeeze in here early. I appreciate it. And Tom is with us. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go mute.
Okay. So we're going to start with the presentation. Mr. Shepherd, you want to get started?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Ways and Means Committee. Hopefully, you have in front of you the Board of Aldermen's budget. It's 2 pages. The first page is the overall budget. Second page is the personnel schedule, which lists the individual positions in the Board of Aldermen's budget. First, I'll go over on the first page just the differences in contractual and other services. For a fiscal year 2023, our budget is about $100,000 less than what it was in FY22, the current fiscal year. And the places where the budget is different and what makes up that difference is that in this current year, we had budgeted additional funds for legal services and professional services in case they were needed throughout the latest redistricting process. But, the process went, very smooth, thanks to the members of the board. And, it was not contentious in any way in that manner. And we had a good enough software system where we were able to produce a map and get it passed, with no one being against it. So we ended up not having to use that money this year. And we don't anticipate those kind of challenges for next year. So the professional and legal services amounts have decreased in this budget for FY23. An amount that has increased is computer and technology services. I know the clerk has been working with the IT department to get some bids with updating some of the IT infrastructure in the Board of Aldermen's offices and the Kennedy room for our meeting.
Do you have these slides that we can share? Because I can't find them unless, I hate to interrupt, but I just can't find that document that you're speaking to. Maybe the clerk can.
The budget for the Board of Aldermen?
Yeah.
Is the budget, y'all don't have the budget in the Google Drive, the budget itself for the.
I'm not finding it. I don't know. I've looked in all the folders, but I haven't found it. So I don't know if is it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just.
No, that's fine. I am.
I'm a visual kind of person.
Oh no, I understand. I thought everybody would have it in front of them. I'm just going on this website right now. I can download from the budgets division's website.
It's on that. It's.
I can pull it up.
It's in. Yeah, Paul, can you pull it up?
Yeah, just the line item detail. The first 2 pages is the Board of Aldermen's budget, the general government line item detail.
Yeah, he's working from your budget book.
I'm sorry. I'm like, we had those other documents, so I'm thinking it's in our folder. So I'll find it. That's okay. Never mind.
No, that's all right. Paul.
Madam Chair, I could pull it up on screen if that's okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was great. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Budget Director.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I was just speaking about, so this is page 1, and we're in the section contractual and other services. You see there's numerous line items for contractual and other services. This year, or for the FY23 budget, we're budgeting about $100,000 less than what we budgeted for this current fiscal year. So it's $260,000 as opposed to $355,000. Now, though, that difference comes from, as I was explaining, if you look at accounts 5659000 and 5660000, The third and fourth from the bottom of that list, professional services and legal services. So for this current fiscal year, we had $100,000 budgeted for professional services and $100,000 budgeted for legal services. In case we needed, those services during the redistricting process, which we didn't. But so for next year, we're not budgeting as much in those line items. There is a budget amount of $25,000 for professional services and $50,000 for legal services, but much less than what's budgeted in this current year. And if you look above that first line item under contractual and other services, computer and technology services, line item 5634000. This current year we're in, we have a budget of $20,000 for that. That budget has been increased by $50,000 in anticipation of some IT upgrades that the clerk has been in discussions with the IT department about, which I don't have all the details on that, but the clerk could definitely provide further details on that. So that's the section contractual and other services. Now, up above is the beginning of the budget is just personal services. That's, salary for employees, benefits, employer payroll taxes, and reserve pay. On page 2 is a more detailed look at that employee salary amount, which is our, table of organization that goes through all the positions that the Board of Aldermen has. And there will be some changes. There are some changes this year there are changes in FY2023 compared to this budget year. Now, one thing that's not changing in the budget, but there will be a, eventual change, of course, in the number of positions is the aldermanic salaries. That's the second and third line items shown. Alderman odd number wards, alderman even number wards. Now that's remained the same as the current fiscal year, even though for the last May, June, for the last 2.5 months of FY 2023, there will only be 14 aldermen total, not 28. But there's the anticipation that for those aldermen, the salary will be roughly twice as much as the current automatic salary. So even though the number of aldermen is going to reduce, it's not going to have a budget change from the current year budget where there's going to, where there's 28 aldermen. So the numbers there and the positions there are the same, starting off 28 aldermen altogether, even though at the end of the year, there'll only be 14. But for budgeting purposes, it pretty much will be the same as it is now, fiscal year 2022 in fiscal year 2023. And then with fiscal year 2024's budget, it'll just start off, with 7 and 7 as far as odd number and even number wards for aldermen. But the salary amount itself will be higher than the per alderman salary is right now. So that's one thing. There's also some positions that have been added to the Board of Aldermen. These are per conversations with the clerk. This is, also from looking at other legislative branches of government and other cities of a similar size. And while we're going through this reorganization of, of this, the board reduction, we just, instead of just looking at it as a reduction in the members of the Board of Aldermen, we took this as an opportunity to reorganize the city, our legislative branch of government, take comparisons to other city governments so that, we could have a, better functioning and a more appropriate staff level for what the Board of Aldermen does. So if you look at the budget and compare it, FY 2022, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth column, and you can in the fourth column, which has the FY23 request for positions and the current authorized positions, which is the second or third column, sorry. So right now we have 49 positions authorized. In this budget, we have 68 positions authorized, but 14 of those positions by the end of the year will go away.
Right.
And if you look below, there's a line item for special automatic assistant, which there's 14 of those for a total amount of $908,600. Well, those positions won't start until, the second half of the fiscal year at the earliest. So it won't be, it's not going to be a full 68 positions for the entire year. And at the end of the year, there's going to be a total of 54 positions because 14 of those automatic positions will go away with the reduction of the board. But as far as specific employees that have been added to the budget for the Board of Aldermen, there's 2 research analysts to the board. Total salary for the 2 positions combined at $145. There is there's also been added, as I just mentioned, the 14 special automatic assistants. So there'll be 14, special automatic assistants, which will work for each individual alderman, the 14 aldermen that are elected in April. A total budget amount for those 14 positions of $908,600. And there's also been a associate clerk, 2 associate clerk positions that have been added. Totals combined for the 2 positions, budgeted salary of $110,000, so $55,000 a piece for those positions. And I'm gonna make sure I don't miss anything. I think is that it, Mr. Clerk? I think those are all the positions we added, correct? And we said the associate clerk. Oh, and the secretary. Right. Sorry, one other position, secretary to the chief automatic clerk. Is budgeted at $52,067. And so those are the additions in staff to the Board of Aldermen. Again, this is based off of looking at other city councils and other cities, other legislative branches in other cities, and we still don't have as many employees as the average city legislative branch of government has. But this begins to get the Board of Aldermen closer to the mark of where other cities are. And I'll take any questions if anyone has any questions.
Okay. So thank you for that presentation. I'm going to ask our committee members, and I'll start with Alderman Boyd.
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro.
I do, and it won't be a very popular question, but so you stated that the alderman's salary will double to roughly $70,000 a year when we're not even paying our paramedics. And I mean, and then have a staff with a part-time job? Or is this going to become a full-time job? The aldermen. I mean, I guess I look at that as I don't know. It to me, if I'm an outsider looking in, that would be my first question is, you know, it just seems a little bit out there to say, you know, that we'll double the salaries, have a staff, and still be a part-time job, and we're not paying our paramedics. We're making more than policemen and firemen and paramedics at that point. Is this, anyway, I'm just putting it out there. I would disagree with that, but you know, it's not going to be popular amongst the aldermen, but
yeah, and that's Alderman Carroll, that's a broader discussion that is going to be had through the Board of Aldermen, not just in this bill, but when we look at the board bill that will be moving through the Board of Aldermen to reorganize staffing and all of that stuff, right? So that'll be part of that discussion also.
Well, I was just going by what Tom had said.
Yeah, so the budget, it doesn't set the salary. It just budgets an amount so that it's there in case that's what it is. And for this budget, it's really only, you know, it'll only be impacted like the last 2.5 months of this fiscal year.
I understand, but you said it would double the salary, which would put
it allows for that. I'm sorry, it allows for that. It allows enough for that, and that has been something that's been mentioned in some of the meetings, you know, that have happened. I think it was legislation committee. There was a group that looked at the reduction and moving forward.
And the reason it allows for that is because when you cut the members of the board in half and the budget amount is still fixed at the same, that gives that flexibility for the final determination along the way. And that'll be part of the next board bill.
But having said that, if the salaries are set that way, then the budgets going forward will always have that increase in there.
No, the salaries aren't set that. They're not set that way. They're not set that way. They're not set that way.
This bill doesn't set the salary.
Yeah, this bill
I
doesn't set.
understand. So if the aldermen vote in the higher salary, the money's there during the last part of this to pay that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that same salary would be going forward for the next ever.
Not automatically. It'll be based on the other board bill that is going to be introduced that will handle that reorganization. That's the thing that's going to be the main thing moving forward.
So it'd be a 3-month pay increase and then a pay decrease?
No. If there's a separate bill outside of the budget later on this year that sets the salary for whatever alderman gets elected in April, then yeah, that'll be their salary for those 4 years. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But this bill is not deciding what the salary is.
Exactly, and not right now. So it would be false for you to say that you would be voting on your salary increase because you're not going to see a salary increase unless you win.
I understand that. I understand that you can't vote on your salary increase. It would be on the next group going forward. It was just the statement that it would double the salary, and I'm just saying that's just a whole lot of money for a part-time job with the staff.
Yeah, and we're going to have plenty of time to discuss that. That's not part of this bill because that would happen during that next election cycle, right? when the members of the board are cut in half. So when you cut the members of the board in half, whatever that board bill, that next board bill that we pass, that will determine what those newly elected officials coming into office, what their salaries will look like, right? So that's in another board bill. That's not part of what we're going to determine today on this.
Okay.
Gentlemen, could I interject just for a moment, please?
Sure.
So process and procedure is the Personnel Committee will have meetings. There will be discussions. We will continue to look at the recommendations from the Legislative Committee that did a lot of homework and looking at other cities and how they are structured. There is nothing permanent about a salary at this moment. This bill is looking at a budget. A budget is a forecasted expenditure. It is not a definite. And so as we move forward for the balance of this year, we will have time to have all the discussions that are required, including working with the personnel department, engaging and looking at very specific job descriptions. We have some ideas of what we want, but we also have to work with them. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And when you talk about dollars, there's no increase to the budget for those last 3 months because the dollars would be there by reducing the 14. So that means that the additional money will be there no matter how much is determined by actual legislation. So I'm excited about the opportunity for this board to become a fully functioning board. And that's critical at this point. And if someone wants to fool themselves and run for this position and believe that they can do it part-time and have a full-time job, I'm sure that the residency that they represent will handle that. So I understand your questions, Alderman Vaccaro.
Not a question, it's a statement. I was basing it off of what Tom said, that the salaries would double is what his statement was. You can play the tape back. And I'm like, well, gee, $70,000 a year. All I'm getting is
I think he was saying
we're not getting, pardon me, but we're not getting the trash picked up. We don't have the paramedics we need. And, I'm just saying that, one of the bigger complaints I get is, we can't hire anybody because we don't pay a competitive salary.
Well, all those things shall be dealt with in the appropriate venue.
Well, okay. So the budget never sets salaries. So there has been discussion that the salaries would increase and increase, close to 70,000. So this budget just leaves room for that. If the Board of Aldermen decides something different, less than that, then of course it would still be okay for this budget because it would just be under budget. Just like this year, we anticipated spending $100,000 for legal services and professional services that we didn't spend. This just allows that because it has been mentioned in other committees that that's a possibility. So we don't want to present a budget that doesn't even allow it to happen, but it's still an additional step of the board bill that the Board of Aldermen would have to pass to actually increase the salary from what it is right now.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on then. Thank you.
All right, so you didn't have any other questions?
No, it was just a statement based off of the comment.
All righty, thank you. Alderwoman Howard.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today, Mr. Shepherd, and Mr. Lewis. Thank you for your comments regarding involving Gateway Greening and all the other organizations in this conversation as we move forward with the ARPA funds. I have one question regarding what's being presented. There's a recorder listed. Is that a new position?
No, that's a currently authorized position, but it's not occupied.
Okay. I don't know that we have ever had it occupied. I was wondering, I'm like, oh, I didn't know we had that's separate from the recorder that we have that runs the city journal, et cetera.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is. The position is the recorder archivist that was approved in the last budget. And as soon as we got ready to hire, to interview people, the pandemic hit. Right.
Okay.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay. I was like, did we have that before? That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Boyd.
I'm sorry. I thought Alderwoman Spencer was here.
Oh, I'm sorry too. I'm doing too many things at once at that moment. Alderwoman Spencer, I'm sorry.
I guess she's not there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President and Tom, for your presentation. And I think the whole thing is with the reduction of the board and what's going on. I applaud the clerk and the president's office because they're looking at the future of how this whole process will look for us. And so as elected officials, whoever will be elected, everybody needs to be very clear. We don't set the tone for the salaries. That's a personnel issue. And so with the fire department, the police department, they set those guidelines and those tones. But we know that the work and some wards will be so large, they will need the support system to make sure that they get the work done to take care of those residents. So I applaud you all because, as we all know, the president is cheap and he don't like spending money. So he has done very well and listened to the clerk and listened to Tom to spend a little bit of money because, our president doesn't like spending dollars. So thank you all for keep pushing it to help him understand we have to look at the global picture. So I have no questions.
Thank you very much. Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions, actually. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President.
Okay, Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions.
All right. Alderwoman Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions, just a statement that I raise my hand to those that are going to be faced with making those decisions pertaining to the women. Hold on. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm reading something. Oh, there we go. Yes. No questions. And I am just listening in on the information that's being presented, and I hope all goes well.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Shepherd or President. I'm waiting because I know there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to the actual number of employees and salary structure and all of that. There's so much more work that has to be done. But one thing about what you have presented thus far, it does not require a lot of additional money.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the great thing about it. And most people don't know. I'm going to even take it a little bit further than Alderwoman Boyd. I was so shocked when I came to work at the Board of Aldermen that you didn't even have a color printer.
Yeah.
I had never seen that in corporate. You don't have a color printer. Then you didn't have individuals. I mean, we didn't even have two printers in one section of the whole long part of the. We operate on a shoestring budget.
No air conditioning,
no air conditioning. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
So most people don't understand that. And it kind of frustrates me. And I'm just going to get on a soapbox for just a second. It frustrates me when I read all these comments that are made talking about how we waste money. We have no money to waste. First of all, we don't touch money. We are legislators. We provide bills and ordinances that allows expenditures to be done and with oversight from our executive branch. And so when I see that they're going to take that money and put more money in their pocket, well, we can't write a check. We can't pick up a quarter. We don't touch money. We don't do RFPs. We don't sign contracts. We don't sign leases. So we are nowhere near money. And most people don't realize that. So I do thank you for keeping this budget streamlined, but at least allowing a little bit of improvement so that the work can be done in a much more professional and expedient way on behalf of our citizens. So do you have a closing, Mr. President?
No, I just want to thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the committee for giving us this time and also allowing us to come on early. I know your schedule's backed up now, so we'll get out of your way, but thank you so much for giving us this time. And again, thanks so much in advance for all the work that you're about to do on this budget. It's not, I mean, you have a long road ahead of you. So my thanks, many thanks to you all. All right.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Madam Mayor is already online. Madam Mayor, we welcome you to the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and you and your staff to make your presentation. And Madam Mayor, we are open to receive you, and you may proceed in the manner that you choose.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Ways and Means Committee, for having me this morning. I am joined today by several members of my staff, Noel Pfeffer, Jared Boyd, and Nancy Cross. I would like to do a brief presentation, if allowed, to share my screen, and then we'll open it up for any questions you or the committee may have.
All right, madam, go right ahead.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. All righty. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you to Paul Payne for helping us with the budget this year. Paul's work is always appreciated and gets us moving in the direction we need to go. So just on the Mayor's Office and General Fund, we have it's a $2.5 million budget. Most of that is payroll, materials and supplies, $24,000, rentals and leases, $12,000, and other contractual services, a little over $190,000. Then under special revenues, we have $186,000. Again, most of that is going towards other payroll and benefits and contractual and other services. We have 19 FTEs now and are requesting an additional FTE to help with ARPA expenditures. Our objectives are prioritizing equity, preserving last year's additions, and empowering new directors to shape their department's budgets. The budget director's fiscal year 23 revenue outlook estimated an over 25 million increase over fiscal year 22 revenues. And the process for reviewing the budget of our departments this year, the Director of Operations and the Director of Policy surveyed and worked with every department to identify key performance indicators and budget priorities. And the final E&A recommendation also includes $17.3 million in unspent ARPA funds, reflecting residents' calls for investments into affordable housing, city services, and vacant buildings. On compensation and benefits overall, it's a $25 million increase, which includes $8.5 million for pay raises, which is the 3% across the board increase. We included family leave at $1 million, and we set aside additional monies to address the shortages in certain job titles. I was listening to the previous department. I understand that Joe Vaquero, I share his frustration that we are also trying to find, we have a labor shortage, trying to find as many employees as we can to address services. And we're proposing a retention incentive, but again, that's subject to a personnel ordinance. On public safety, that's a $10 million increase. The 20% increase to the health department from 11, which takes their budget from 11 million to 13.5 million. As you are aware, we have a dynamic new health director and Dr. Mati Slachwayo Davis. So she has asked for 20 plus epidemiologists, nurses, and public health workers in addition to her department, and establishing for the first time a behavioral health team, which we know is sorely needed as we address the behavioral health effects coming out of this pandemic and behavioral health in general. On public safety, we're requesting $2.5 million for 911 consolidation and citywide sirens, which continues our work to try to increase our services related to 911 services. Witness protection services for $500,000, emergency management an additional $300,000, civilian oversight and public integrity $2.5 million. Funding detainee and medical meal services, an additional $1.25 million, and additions to the Director of Public Safety's office for $500,000. Next, in city services, we continue to try to modernize our city government, so we're requesting a $2.8 million increase, which includes the continued expansion of the ERP program, which launched just a couple of months ago, and mainframe mitigation, obviously coming off of mainframe for another $400,000. We're requesting an increase to the trash and recycling budget for $2.2 million, vacant lot maintenance for $950,000. That's to make sure that the vacant lots continue to get mowed, that the grass doesn't grow really high. Citywide traffic calming study, that's a matching grant we are going to apply for the Department of Transportation. Additional vacant building inspectors for $300,000. Again, we want to try to make sure that we don't lose any more lives like we lost with firefighter Benjamin Polson just earlier this year. Additional lifeguards and custodians, and an additional civil rights enforcement investigators at $200,000. On economic justice, requesting a $10 million increase there. So we added $2 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, $5 million in ARPA for building stabilization. That'll go to the building division. Historic building stabilization for $1 million, opening a Slate office in North St. Louis. It's critical that we take those services to the community instead of expecting them to come all the way downtown. And that'll be opened also at Sumner High. Neighborhood planning implementation for $1 million and SLDC neighborhood managers for $630,000. And overall the administration budget, there's a $900,000 increase for the Comptroller's office. You just had the Board of Aldermen president here for and discussed $1 million increase in that budget as well. For my office, overall, it's a $300,000 increase. The city councilor is requesting a $300,000 increase. Personnel department is requesting a $400,000 increase, and across city departments, we're requesting $400,000 increase for PIOs or public information officers and grant writers to try to get every federal dollar that we can that's currently available coming out of the federal administration. And last slide, additional resources. This budget does not include the $135 million we had previously appropriated in Board Bill 2, $87 million appropriated in Board Bill 184 or the infrastructure bill or capital bill, and the $39 million appropriated in Board Bill 82 for North City Development and ADA for persons with disabilities. And of course, we passed the $50 million GO bond in the April election. We also have updated our transparency portal, and on the ARPA website, you'll also find all of the outstanding RFPs that are available. And then we also have a resource guide for all of the programs available through ARPA, also on the city's website. So at this point, I will stop sharing my screen and open it up to any questions you have. And thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start with Alderman Boyd, please.
No questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Vaccaro. I'll move on. Alderwoman Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Jones, for joining us today. I have no questions, but the presentation was succinct and very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Spencer, are you back? Alderwoman Boyd.
I have no questions because it was so much information. So I'm gonna have to digest all of this information. So I might come back later. But right now, thank you for all the information.
Well, Alderwoman Boyd, you know you can call me anytime.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Alderman Oldenburg.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor, thank you very much. I had a question specifically around you made some suggestions in and goals in your state of the city regarding the mayor's office of violence prevention. And I just didn't know if that was rippled throughout the budget. I couldn't find any detail on it, or if that's something separate that's coming. But can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because as I understood it, it was to kind of centralize a lot of public safety resources, but have a specific office of violent prevention. So I don't know how that's stood up without being within this current fiscal year.
I believe that will be included in the Director of Public Safety's budget. But if someone, is that correct, Mr. Boyd, Jared Boyd?
No, Alderman Oldenburg, I believe we're still working at the TO for that office, but we do not envision that any additional Board Bill 1 funding will be necessary to launch that office.
Oh, great. Okay. That's perfect. Thank you for that, Madam Mayor and Jared. Appreciate that. That's all I have at this time.
All right. Thank you. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Madam Mayor. I have no questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Mayor. I have no questions. The presentation was very thorough, and don't have any questions.
All right, thank you. I honestly don't have any questions at the moment. I do believe as we move through this process on both sides, you will continue to be in touch with your department heads as we will be discussing their budgets a little bit more thoroughly. And if there are any issues that come up, of course, we will all be in consultation about that. I would love for you to forward your presentation to the Board of Aldermen's clerk, Madam Mayor, and then we'll disseminate it to all the aldermen so that we're all on the same page, because it's very clear and concise. And one of the things I always do is share those kinds of things with my residents. So we would appreciate that, please.
Yes, ma'am. We'll do that right away.
Okay. Madam Mayor, feel free to close.
Well, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present our budget, as well as just some overarching budget priorities with the overall budget, and appreciate all of the questions that we did receive today. And if there are any additional questions after we're gone, please know that we are available to answer any questions you have about either our budget in particular or the city's budget overall.
All right. Well, I thank you very much. And I know most especially increasing the health department is going to mean so much to our city. I mean, everything that is going on leads back to health.
Yes, ma'am.
The crime, everything. So we're very excited about that. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the attention that your staff has been there by your side. And we will keep this going, and I'm sure we'll be touching base as we move forward the next few weeks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and have a great week, everyone.
All right. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. For our committee, I had listed on here to have a discussion. And Mr. Clerk, are you still on?
I am.
All right, sir. So as I talk about how we move forward in the next couple of weeks, I wanted to make sure that you were hearing this and/or could help us if we get into a little situation. So we've already added, I think, if I counted right, 4 other entities to come before us today.
Of that, I have 2. Great Rivers Greenway.
East-West Gateway. And because I brought up another one too that interacts with all of that. It'll come to my mind in a moment.
City, the new business that.
Greater St. Louis, Inc.
Greater St. Louis, thank you.
And we determined that we already have the IT department schedule. That's where the 4 came in.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So we will rely on you to fit that into our schedule where it is permitted.
Okay.
And I wanted to go through the committee just one more time to see if there's any needs that you have based on what we've discussed today and based on you're looking at the schedule for the future. So I'll start with Alderman Boyd.
Not right now, Madam Chair. That doesn't mean I may not come up with something the next day or 2.
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Just make sure that when you send your email that add me to the clerk.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro.
I'm sorry, I have really no other questions at this time.
Okay, sir. Just checking, because anything that we could be working on your behalf, I wanted to have that moving forward.
No, I'm anxious to see, as different groups come across and explain their budgets and that, but I don't think I have anyone in particular, at least at the minute, that, I would like to see them come in. Certainly, I'm looking forward to cuts and putbacks as we hear from the committees, because they're going to tell us, that we cut this one short or they need more than what, and that's really where, the temptation obviously is to cut back, on some of the mayor's stuff, to travel and stuff. But I can tell you the issue there is we have to also come into an agreement with E&A. So those fights, even though they sound fun, usually doesn't end up in a winner for, because, if we can't come up with a budget that we all agree on, the budget that's presented is the one that goes into effect. So any cuts and putbacks we do basically are just a waste of time. So anyway, it's just a statement, but thank you.
All right, sir. Alderwoman Howard.
I really have nothing at this time. However, I'm going to review the revised schedule, and I'll any concerns I have, I'll share with you and the clerk. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Alderwoman Spencer, did you come back? I don't think so. I looked a moment ago. Okay. Alderwoman Boyd.
I have no questions. I could always call you or the clerk if I have any. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Oldenburg.
I've got nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Okay. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
I have nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Payne. Are you still with us?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Was there anything that you heard that you think that we need to address, and or any department that you think, as you have looked through this budget so many times already, that we don't have listed that should come before us?
Nothing comes to mind right now, but I'm sure as you get, and as you know, as you've gone through this before, usually when things come up, something will come up during the hearings. Oh, well, then we need to invite so-and-so. That's
right.
Usually how it goes. But I think you've got it covered right now pretty much.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you for your presentation today and for being here with us throughout this process. And I know that as the general public tunes into this process, we'll be getting a lot of interesting emails. So as we go to the next item on the agenda, all committee members were present, so we don't have anybody to excuse. And were there any other recommendations or anything that anybody need to make? The last call.
Madam Chairwoman, may I speak?
Go right ahead, sir.
I just want to clarify. The meeting date with IT is scheduled for June the 6th.
June 6th, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that, and actually that's good that they're later, because that gives us a chance to listen to other departments and figure out how they fit in all of this. Because I think we still got some departments that are out there on an island by themselves and they're not connected in. Mm-hmm. So that'll be helpful. I don't have anything else that we needed to cover today. I just wanted to say thank you. We didn't go over time that much, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Everybody have a blessed, safe day.
And you as well.
Thank you.